Good afternoon, Adam here. Today I wanted to talk about NFT house sales, which is something that I saw on Twitter today that I really wanted to get into. So, just for a bit of background information, I'm a North Carolina attorney. I do personal injury litigation, I do real estate litigation, and I do some probate litigation. And I'm also a real estate investor, so I have a triplex and two single family homes. So it's fair to say that I am invested both literally and in my legal career as in the real estate industry. So I have some expertise and some knowledge about why this whole idea is a terrible idea. So let me turn to the post in question so that we can just hop into this together. Give me 1 second. So as you can see, I retweeted this one saying that go ahead and do this because this is going to result in more litigation, which is good for my real estate my real estate litigation part of my business. So here's the original post, basically saying that they called it NFT house, sold for $175,000 on the blockchain. So again, this is happening in South Carolina as opposed to North Carolina, but the principles are going to remain about the same. They're basically so the way that this works is essentially the house is owned inside of a company, specifically a limited liability company, LLC, and the NFT represents a token that represents the owner of the LLC to which holds title to the property. So, just to give a little bit of background as to why that's important. So, if you haven't had to deal with real estate before, you never bought a house. The way real estate transactions work is the Register of Deeds is the government agency in each county that basically keeps track of all the sales of real property, including whenever you give someone the right to cross your property to get to their property or use your property in some way that's considered an easement across your property. Also, power companies, etc., have easements across property. So that's all recorded in the Register of Deeds, which keeps a record from basically the beginning of time through the current day. And most Register of Deeds, at least in North Carolina, let you go back about 60 years. And it's indexed by name, and you can basically go from owner to owner to owner to owner and see who owned it, in what order, and when. And this helps resolve a lot of disputes, but there's still a lot of real estate disputes, as you can tell from the fact that I do real estate litigation. So even with this very clear path of who owns what, there are still issues around easements, around boundary lines, around all sorts of different stuff, driveways, you name it. And this whole idea of putting the ownership of a piece of property on the blockchain runs completely contrary to basic principles of real estate purchases. So in most states, there's this principle called the bona fide purchaser for value, which basically says that if something's, if someone goes and looks at the Register of Deeds and buys a property and they bought basically subject to what they could see as the public records, and then they go and record it, by record I mean they basically submit it to the Register of Deeds, they're the owner. It's called the race statute that most states still have some form of that or another, where if they buy it for a fair value, record it, they're the owner. So what's going to happen here is you're going to have, instead of the owner of the property changing hands, what you're going to have is you're going to have this one LLC. So just to show you what their page looks like, you're going to have this one LLC that's going to own the property, and then basically the LLC is going to change hands through use of the blockchain. It's going to create some pretty significant issues. The first of which is not even addressed by any of these posts is that when you buy an LLC, it's different than just buying a piece of property. You're buying a company. You're not buying property. The company happens to own property, but you are specifically buying a business, because that's what LLCs are designed for. They're designed for business. They're not designed to be a person. So businesses are different than people. Businesses carry liabilities. So let's just say that a business, this LLC, let's just say it was a rental house, and somebody trips, falls, breaks their leg because the slumlord owner of this wonderful piece of property happens to not take care of the stairs, and the foot goes through the stair, breaks their leg, and then you are a prospective buyer of this piece of property, and you don't realize that this accident has happened. The slumlord before you sells it to you. You may be a great owner, and you may want to keep it up. But what ends up happening is you may find out a year and a half later, you get a lawsuit in the mail saying that this blockchain LLC is being sued for this foot going through the deck a year and a half prior, and you have now inherited this lawsuit, and you may very well be liable for what the prior owner did. With the traditional method of just selling the piece of property, if you buy property, you don't buy the liabilities of the company that owned it prior to you getting title to the company to the property. So you're creating significant layers of additional liabilities that there's just no reason to do it that way. You also notice it's sort of entertaining that there's this box down at the bottom that says, "What are you most interested about? What most interests you about buying a home on the blockchain?" And you'll see closing quickly and no paperwork are on this list. The paperwork is there for a reason. It's not extraneous. People do try to optimize the paperwork. It's there to give disclosures about the property. It's there to give you an idea about what exactly you're buying. It's there so that your title company can go and look at the title and see who has the right to cross your property. They can see whether or not somebody else says they own it other than the person who's selling it to you. And closing quickly, is sort of comes along the same lines. You need to do your due diligence. You need to do inspections. You are losing out on a lot of the protections of the law by buying a property. You're not buying a property again. You're buying a company that happens to own property. So you are losing out on all the protections that have been developed over decades to protect people from themselves, because most owners are not savvy enough to sort of go through this process without some help. I mean, I had to go to law school and then spend years working on this kind of stuff to have any idea as to the risks that would come along with buying a piece of property like this. Another very intelligent lawyer on Twitter pointed out some sort of interesting things that I think are worth mentioning. So every LLC has what's called an operating agreement, which basically dictates the way that the company is run. So this is the operating agreement for this particular piece of property. It's, as you can see, it's an LLC. And you'll notice, I guess it would help if I switch the video over. So here's the operating agreement for this LLC. So you'll notice that it basically determines how this property can be used and sold. And they're playing fast and loose with security law as well, but I don't do security law, so I'm not going to get into the specifics. But if you want to, Mike Dunford, who is a very good Twitter follow, gets into some of the more security interests that, again, I'm sort of outside of my wheelhouse. One of the interesting things is this one. So this is basically saying, get into the legalese of it. This is the procedure by which you can basically remove the property from the blockchain. Basically saying that somebody could buy the LLC, they could basically buy it inside the LLC, then they could burn or destroy the NFT and then move it to, and then transfer it basically to themselves personally, thereby removing it from the blockchain and sort of back into the normal stream of business. This is interesting because basically there are ways to encumber these tokens, which means basically put either debt or you can take out a loan against the NFT essentially. And this is saying you can't burn the token if there's any encumbrance, meaning any debt against the token. And if you, here, the second part is the crazy part. If the token administrator, being whatever this Roofstock company, if the token administrator determines you've violated the user agreements associated with Roofstock, then they can basically prohibit the sale of your house and say, sorry, you can't sell it. So you're not really buying the property, you're buying a company which is subject to a contract with this other company. So, the whole idea of having what we call fee simple on paper, having fee simple by filing a deed in the register of deeds is saying that this is my house, other than the government, nobody else can tell me what to do with it. This whole NFT idea, you are essentially subjecting yourself to an additional third party that has control that no one else would ever have, and they're somehow calling this an improvement on traditional house sales. And normally NFTs and blockchain sort of is focused on people who are very libertarian and outside of, they don't want anybody controlling their money or what they do with their money. And this actually subjects property to more controls than a standard house sale. So I thought, this would be an interesting topic because it's something I'm interested in and have some knowledge on. It's a terrible idea. Don't buy houses on the blockchain unless you want to be involved in litigation. And like I said, that'll be a good bit of business for me. I'd be happy to do it. But don't do it for your own good. If you have any questions about this, or you're sort of curious about some specifics, let me know. I will provide a link to the Twitter post. I don't want to provide a link to these guys' website because you shouldn't. I mean, please don't go buy this piece of property. All right, thanks.